Welcome to The Art of Medicine, the program that explores the arts, business, and clinical aspects of the practice of medicine. I'm your host, Dr. Andrew Wilner. Today, I'm excited to speak with Dr. Greg Hammer. Dr. Hammer is a pediatric anesthesiologist and professor at Stanford University. He's also the author of Gain Without Pain, the Happiness Handbook for Healthcare Professionals. Dr. Hammer will share his secret formula for happiness in just a moment. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsor, locumstory.com. Maybe you're curious about locums and how it might fit into your career story, but do you know all the different reasons physicians choose locums and how it works for them? At locumstory.com, you can hear firsthand stories as diverse as physicians themselves. There's not one solution for everyone. The variety of opportunities might surprise you. Locum Story is an unbiased educational resource. It has tools that let you explore trends in your specialty and compare different locums agencies. There's even a simple quiz to see if locums is right for you. Do your own research at locumstory.com. It's easy. And now to my guest. Welcome, Dr. Greg Hammer.
Thanks, Andrew. Great to be with you.
Yeah, I'm thrilled that you're able to join us here. And I'm interested, and I think all the listeners are too, in more happiness. So, you're in a pretty pediatric anesthesiology. I mean, in critically ill, sort of small people, that's pretty serious business. So tell us a little bit about your background and then where the happiness fits in.
Sure. Well, I think that is the one thing that almost 8 billion of us want is happiness. My background, I grew up outside of Chicago. I began my collegiate career at Northwestern. I transferred to the University of Wisconsin in Madison to study nutritional science and have been very interested in nutritional science ever since then. And I've always been into fitness, physical fitness, and done my best to delve into mental and spiritual fitness as well. In medical school, I really enjoyed working with people in pediatric medicine when I did my pediatrics rotation. It wasn't so much the kids, although I certainly have grown to love children more and more. But it was really the kinship I felt with the other people in the specialty, not taking themselves too seriously, not a lot of big egos, for which I have little patience. So I went into pediatrics and then really fell in love with working in the intensive care unit. And so at that time, anesthesiology and critical care were a straightforward and accessible combination in critical care medicine. So I did another residency in anesthesiology at the University of Pennsylvania, and then fellowships in pediatric anesthesiology and critical care at Children's of Philadelphia. I have been at Stanford for decades. I actually just retired at the end of 2023. I really had 3 jobs while I was there. I had a lab where we did developmental pharmacology research. And then I had my cardiac and general pediatric intensive care practice in the Department of Pediatrics and my pediatric cardiac anesthesiology practice in the Department of Anesthesiology. So busy time. I thought about retirement for 10 or 15 years beforehand. I think you mentioned the book title, beginning with GAIN, which is in caps. It's an acronym for what I think are the 4 principal ingredients to at least our mental and spiritual well-being, and they are gratitude, acceptance, intention, and non-judgment. So the intention means having a plan. And you and I were talking a little bit about retirement a few minutes ago before we started recording. And yeah, you have to have a plan. But there's a lot of ways to engage with the world out there, and medicine is pretty consuming. So I'm moved on to other things that I've been planning for some time. So, but in any case, I got involved in the Stanford WellMD directive around 2012, and that was a group that was convened to address the growing prevalence of burnout in medicine, not just in my specialties. And the simple definition of burnout is mental and physical exhaustion related to chronic stress. So as I got very involved in this group, I got more interested in the physiology of stress and aging and longevity science, health span science, we might say. So, that's something I've been really interested in for the last decade or so. And that's when I decided to write the book, just to sort of put into writing some of my thoughts related to burnout and what are the drivers, but mainly what are some of the solutions. And so I address primarily the mental and spiritual aspects and the gain practice. And then I have chapters on sleep, exercise, and nutrition, which I think are the three legs of the tripod that supports our physical well-being. So we need to attend to both our physical and mental, spiritual well-being, of course. And so now I'm really dedicating myself to continue teaching and speaking on topics related to wellness, physical and mental, spiritual, and talking to a lot of people like you, doing television, radio, podcast appearances, and about to launch an upgrade to my website, which is greghammermd.com. And there'll be a lot of articles there about wellness, about nutrition, sleep, exercise, supplements, and even drugs related to health span longevity science. So I'm otherwise, I've been very fortunate. I have two beautiful homes, one on Stanford campus and one here in Carmel. So I'm spending a month or so here in Carmel where it's pouring rain. Behind me, you could imagine seeing the tree canopy below me. I'm up on top of a hill overlooking Monterey Bay, which unfortunately even I can't see here today as it's quite cloudy and raining. But that's a executive summary of who I am, Andrew, and happy to engage in any way you'd like.
Well, I appreciate that. As we get older, we there seems to be a consensus that aging well is important. Not something I thought about 20 years ago, but it does come up more often now. So I think there's kind of a natural kind of swing in that direction as we age to realize the importance of aging well. That obviously includes the things you mentioned, sleep and nutrition and spiritual and mental health, so that the years are well spent. Well, but the fact of the matter is, doctors work too many hours and it's stressful. People get sick, they don't get better. Sometimes they die, their families aren't happy. You miss stuff, your family stuff, you're late. I was late for a party the other night. Everybody was unhappy. I wish I had just said I'm not coming, you know, rather than be late. How do you deal with the practicality of what I guess the word would be balance? How do you make time for everything when there's not enough time for everything?
Well, I guess the only way to make time for more other than our medical endeavors is to be as efficient as possible. That's one of the uh, elements of happiness and professional well-being. The WellMD model at Stanford has three domains that can contribute to burnout, or on the other hand, wellness. And they are, one of them is in fact the efficiency of our practice. So if our practice is very efficient, if you're in a clinic practice, which I guess you are as a neurologist, and you don't have enough treatment rooms and enough staff, and your patients are waiting forever and they're unhappy, and you end up being in the clinic for an hour, hour and a half more than you really needed to be just because of inefficiency, you're not going to be very happy. But that's really up to the leadership to give you the tools you need to have an efficient practice. The next domain is really the culture in which we work, which again is largely a leadership thing, and we make our own contributions to treating people respectfully. But beyond that, there are a lot of other elements of the culture. And the third domain in the WellMD rubric for professional fulfillment is really personal resilience. So that's the element that I'm most interested in. And we just need to be as circumspect as possible about how we manage our time. But there are elements beyond our control in the efficiency or inefficiency domain. So the best we can do is really really have a plan and purposefulness. The I in gain is intention, and we need to really apply those things to our physical and mental well-being. And, I think like everybody who's a little bit burnt out with all of the extremely stressful circumstances around the world, wars, lots of innocent civilians, women and children, and innocent men being killed, and just our politics, the Great Divide, what's happening with the planet, uh, social media issues. I mean, one could go on and on. We're all stressed and kind of burnt out. And so when we get a little bit off the rails with depression and burnout, we need to refocus on the elements of sleep, exercise, and nutrition, and then our mental wellness program as well. So, I think we all need to redouble our efforts to focus on those things we can control. And sometimes time is not one of them, but we can be as resilient as possible, but we have to really apply ourselves and have a well thought out plan.
I've worked in a lot of different hospitals and clinics over the years, and I think I could write a book about how to maximize inefficiency. I've seen so many examples, whether it's an electronic medical record that doesn't work, or having the patients wait too long or not knowing what their medicines are. I mean, I don't know if there'd be much of a market for that book, but I think all physicians are really exposed to a lot of inefficiency that's beyond their control, and that's a stressor. One practical piece of advice, of course, the other thing is trying to do too many things, right? And people ask you, "Oh, Dr. Wilner, can you do this? Can you do that? Can you be on this committee? You're so great. Can you help with this?" And one wellness guy said, "You have to learn how to say no." He said, "Here's a tip." He says, "Tell them you need to look at your calendar." Then you pull out your calendar and you go, "Well, let me see here." It's like, "Oh, no, I got something planned for that day," and then put it away. So you're not telling them no that you don't want to do it. You're just telling them no that you can't do it. I don't know. I'm going to try that. That seemed like a good trick. Do you have any other little tricks like that help you get through the day?
No, that's a good one. I think, a related response would be, I'd really love to help you with that, but I'm fully committed. So yes, I mean, as you said, time management is key. And again, one of the three domains of professional fulfillment, or on the other hand, burnout, is efficiency of our practice. And those things you mentioned are really beyond our control. And all the more reason to look at what we're doing with the rest of our time and try to manage it carefully, because it's very easy to get overcommitted, especially if you're well liked and people admire the work that you're doing and you do it well and you take some degree of pride in it. Of course, they would love your help with their committee or their project. Then no, I think we definitely have to learn to say no.
Dr. Siegel wrote, an endorsement of your book, and it says how to transform personal and professional challenges into strength and wisdom. Now, without reading the whole book, how do I do that?
Well, there's a lot of ways to approach that question. I would say, as I'm very interested in the physiology of acute stress and chronic stress, let's focus on resilience, which is that third domain in the WellMD rubric for professional fulfillment. And if we don't, it's going to be a contributor to burnout. So what is resilience in the context of burnout and stress? Simply stated, the acute stress response, as you know, involves a rather sudden elevation in the adrenaline in our body, in our bloodstream, an elevation in cortisol, and a number of other hormonal changes. And it's okay to be acutely stressed. We're walking down the hall, our department chairman wants to meet with us, and we don't know why. We're a little concerned that maybe we did something wrong. And
I have that on Monday. It's
so you get this kind of acute stress response. You feel your heart rate going up. You feel maybe anxious, a little jittery. It's okay to feel that way, but resilience means bringing those acute stress responses back down to baseline quickly. And if you can't do that, if you lack resilience, then those acute changes associated with the acute stress response are going to become chronic. And chronic elevation of adrenaline and cortisol lead to all the diseases associated with aging, cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes and obesity, or so-called metabolic syndrome, neurodegenerative disease, dementia in your domain, and even cancer. So I think, to learn how to become more resilient given the circumstances at hand is key. And that's something that, I've recommended. I teach a class in resuscitation for new fellows in critical care. And at the end of the workshops, different faculty members give a piece of advice to the trainees. And, they talk about maintain your relationships with your spouse or your significant other and this and that. I think people sort of know that. My advice is usually really embrace a mindfulness practice and learn how to become more resilient. Otherwise, the acute stress that you're going to be experiencing quite commonly during your training and afterward is going to become chronic, and you're going to be subject to all these disease states and accelerated aging and unhappiness. And so I think, how to be happier, it's all really about, or largely about, resilience. And that's really what the GAIN approach is about.
I interviewed a couple years ago Tom Schneider, Dr. Tom Schneider, who's an amazing guy. He wrote a book, The Extraordinary Life of an Ordinary Man. And I think he's in his 70s, and he's by far not an ordinary man. For example, at one point, he had a horrible childhood with abuse and everything. And then he was going to be a Jesuit priest because it was the only place to go, for him. And he was sort of a ne'er-do-well. And so then he enlisted in the military, or he got drafted, I'm not sure, for Vietnam, ended up as a jet pilot, shot down 3 times, survived each time. When he got out of the military, he tried being a commercial pilot, also crashed. So he segged into medicine, safer. Anyway, he had a long, interesting life that he wrote about, but he came up with something called GAGE, gratitude, acceptance, giving, and that will all lead to enjoyment. But both of you, GAIN and GAGE, both start with gratitude. Uh, I think all of us don't feel grateful necessarily when we walk through the doors at work or have other encounters during the day. So, could you expand a little bit on gratitude?
Sure. Well, I think gratitude is intrinsically part of happiness. I mean, we can imagine or perhaps know someone who's relatively poor financially, but happy, somebody who may be physically challenged and happy. But it's hard to imagine someone even who's not grateful and is happy. So all of us here, I think everybody listening to this podcast, have much for which to be grateful. For example, most of us live in a relatively safe place, unlike other people in the world, in Ukraine and Gaza and areas of war in Africa and elsewhere around the world rather. So we can be grateful for having a safe place to live, access to food, access to medical care, being grateful for our health. I mean, we're healthy enough to be participating in your podcast, and things could sure be a lot worse. So the issue is, Andrew, that we all have ways that our brains are wired that tend to interfere with our ability to be happy and grateful. And one of them is that we have a negativity bias, and this is very well documented in the social sciences. We tend to remember the negative and forget the positive. And that starts often when we just get out of bed in the morning, even maybe before we get out of bed. We wake up and, maybe we have a part of our body that's a little sore, bothering us. We tend to focus on that. We get out of bed, we go do our morning hygiene, and we're focusing on the pain that we're experiencing in our left knee, let's say, which is kind of stiff. And we're not feeling grateful about the miracles of the way the rest of our body is working. Imagine just our kidneys were filtering our blood all night and creating urine, sending it down to our bladder, which was generally storing it. And so we didn't have to get up every 30 minutes to empty it. Maybe we had to get up a couple of times, but let's be grateful that we're able to sleep through the night in large part, and that our physiology is functioning generally well, and that our other knee is pain-free. So instead, though, we have this negativity bias. We tend to obsess on the things that are bothering us, whether they're mental or physical. And so back to gratitude, we just need to begin to rewire our brains. And that's what the GAIN practice is all about. We can either have this negativity bias consume our thoughts, or we can begin to right the ship and rewire the way we think. And that's why daily practice, albeit even brief, where gratitude is part of that practice, is little by little rewiring our brains to think in a more positive way. And it starts with being grateful for all of the wonderful things in our lives, our relative health, relative wealth, safety, access to food, loving family members, part of our community, the opportunity, if we're a physician, to help other people. So we have much for which to be grateful. So let's start really having a plan to focus on that.
What do you think about I've heard about a gratitude journal or writing 3 things you're grateful for, at bedtime. What do you think about small practices like that? Does that help?
Oh, oh, absolutely. In fact, you mentioned the 3 good things. That's been an ongoing study at Duke University, whereby people can actually enroll as a participant online, take a sort of a happiness survey at baseline, and then pledge to journal 3 things they're grateful for as they get ready to go to sleep at night. So, I had a great lunch with a friend, productive day at work, a wonderful evening with my family. Many other things could be part of that practice. And what the researchers have shown is that just even thinking about 3 good things before we go to sleep results in better quality sleep and more happiness, according to the survey science. So, and that can take no time at all. We can even just think of 3 good things for which we're grateful as we turn down the bed linens and prepare to go to sleep at night. And that's just hugely important. Again, we're rewiring our brain just one little baby step at a time by engaging in a gratitude practice.
Thanks for that. We've got a few minutes left. And since I have you here, and since you just retired, and people are always asking me when I'm going to retire, I think it has something to do with the color of my hair. Hopefully not the quality of my work, but it is something that comes up. And one argument is, you kind of glossed over it, but you said you did 2 residencies. That's like 80 hours a week for 6 years, was it, or 7? 3 years here, then 3 years there. I mean, this is not an insignificant investment, and now you've practiced for 30 years plus, and you're damn good at what you do, and now you're just going to stop.
Well, retirement is it's a big transition. So I think it takes the I in gain, if I can go back to the gain model, which is intention. And so, we really need to attend to the arc of our life as
Ah,
early in life as possible and start thinking about what we're going to do when we retire and really have a plan. And I think, there are 3 ingredients to our lives, Andrew, that we need to focus on, beside the gain practice or mindfulness practice and rewiring our brains and also our sleep, exercise, and nutrition. But more broadly spoken, I think we need to continue to learn and grow. We need to be in community with other people. Extremely important that we not, get isolated more and more as we age. We need to be engaged in our communities, whatever that means to you. And the third component is we need to serve. We really need to be engaged in helping other people. So learning and growing, being in community, and service are really 3 essential ingredients, and they become especially apparent as we look toward retirement and once we retire. So I think we really need to have a plan for how we're going to engage in those 3 areas when we do retire. When we're working, those things just sort of come naturally. We're, of course, as physicians, we're always learning and growing. Our trainees teach us something new every day on rounds or in the operating room. We have to keep up with the literature. So we're learning, we're engaged in the community where we work, if nothing else, and we're serving. So that happens naturally when we're working, but we need to really make a plan for how to continue those 3 endeavors when we do retire. And so, good luck to you in that regard. And I'm sure you're thinking about those things, whether you've, sort of articulated them as such or not. And I certainly have thought about it for a long time. So, I've sort of planned on a year of transition where I'd be, I think changes can be difficult, but it can also be really positive. And so since I just retired at the end of 2023, I'm still, in the first quarter, or maybe entering the second quarter of that year-long process of transition.
any regrets?
Definitely not. Nope. No regrets at all. I think, especially given the intensity of the work that I did, I'm 68 years old. I'm right behind you, and it's a good time to hang up the spikes. It's a younger man's sport.
Well, I think it's good to go out with glory, at the top of your game, rather than dwindling. I think that's certainly something I'm keeping in mind. And it sounds like you retired with intention, right? They say retire to something, not from something. So I'm sure that's exactly what you did. Okay, well, we're just about out of time. Anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up?
No, I just would like your listeners to be reminded that we all have this negativity bias. We all have a tendency to remember the negative, maybe have some degree of depression, and uh, you're not alone if you feel this way. It's not your dirty little secret. Our brains all work this way, and the good news is we have this amazing quality, as you know very well, called neuroplasticity. We can actually change the way we think, um, and so let's be positive and optimistic and consider changing the way we think for the better. And we're all in this together. Nobody's alone.
Dr. Greg Hammer, thanks for joining me on The Art of Medicine.
Great to be with you, Andrew.
Before we close, I'd like to give another thanks to our sponsor, locumstory.com, a resource where providers can get real, unbiased answers about locum tenens. I'm Dr. Andrew Wilner. See you next time. This program is hosted, edited, and produced by Andrew Wilner, MD, FACP, FAAN. Guests receive no financial compensation for their appearance on The Art of Medicine. Andrew Wilner, MD, is Associate Professor of Neurology at the University of Tennessee Health Science Center, Memphis, Tennessee. Views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on this program belong solely to Dr. Wilner and his guests and not necessarily to their employers, organizations, or other group or individual. While this program intends to be informative, it is meant for entertainment purposes only. The Art of Medicine does not offer professional financial, legal, or medical advice. Dr. Wilner and his guests assume no responsibility or liability for any damages, financial or otherwise, that arise in connection with consuming this program's content. Thanks for watching. For more episodes of The Art of Medicine, please subscribe. www.andrewwilner.com